Hello there. Despite the bluster that the Brexit talks cannot progress to trade until we pay their exorbitant bar bill, it is reported that the EU is already working on the next phase behind the scenes. Although France and Germany are determined to try and block any future trade talks until the UK opens its wallet, ambassadors from the 27 other EU member states are lining up for what they are calling a brainstorming exercise relating to any possible transition period and future trade deals with the UK. Although this brainstorming might be a good signal, Politico says that Germany and France are keen to avoid any impression that trade talks will automatically start in December. So they are preparing two documents, one for sufficient progress and one for a stalemate position, all dependent on how deep they can mine into the UK treasury. And while the EU points its finger at the UK, accusing us of a lack of paying of bills, insufficient engagement or unpreparedness, it transpires that David Davis, the UK chief Brexit negotiator, had invited his counterpart from the EU, Michel Barnier, to London for talks this week, but this was declined due to a prior engagement. And the EU team could not make it to the UK for talks early next week either. So things are being delayed by the EU negotiating team, presumably to wait until Germany and France have decided how much more they want the talks delayed by. Now, do you remember the Remainers telling you that untrammelled immigration does not affect pay rates? You know, that the number of EU workers in the UK had absolutely no effect on how much you get paid. Well, the Independent of all sources is reporting that starting salaries in the UK rose in October at the second quickest rate since November 2015, and it's down to employers having to counter a growing shortage of EU workers. But of course the Remainers will bemoan this in some way, however left-wing they purport to be. The paper quotes the Recruitment and Employment Confederation as saying, "We already know that EU workers are leaving because of the uncertainties they are facing right now. We therefore need clarity around what future immigration systems will look like. Otherwise the situation will get worse and employers will face even more staff shortages." Now, staff shortages mean upwards pressure on wages and employers being more keen to look after their staff as well as supporting and training them, which will then lead to increased productivity. And remember that productivity is the big worry for the UK at the moment. And I'm of the opinion that cheap labour is one of the causes of the productivity gap. Moving on to UK fisheries. The UKIP MEP Mike Hookham has launched a petition today calling for the EU Common Fisheries Policy laws not to be transposed into UK law as part of the Great Repeal Bill. The government has said that although we will leave the EU and CFP on day one, the provisions of the CFP need to be transferred across to provide continuity, and it could also form part of any transitional period. But Mike Hookham wants what he calls the disastrous CFP quota system to be scrapped immediately on Brexit Day, regardless of the nature of any deal. Throughout the referendum, the fishing community of Great Britain was one of the loudest voices in the Leave camp, as they have seen firsthand how disastrous EU policy can be to our country, he said. "I for one will support our fishing communities all the way, as I believe post-Brexit we can achieve the £6.3 billion boost to the UK economy that the fishing industry is estimated to be worth." Finally, you may have missed it, but the Chief Executive of the NHS, Simon Stevens, has risked his job by calling on the government to start the transition to the NHS receiving the £350 million a week that he said the Leave campaign pledged in the run-up to the EU referendum last year. The trouble is, The UK is still in the EU, and of course that money cannot be available, nor can it be available during any transition phase which we pay for. Also, it was not a pledge by any government, because the government was, if you remember, for Remain. No, it was an indicator by Leave campaigners of what the money could be used for, all dependent on what voters want it spent on when we finally leave the EU and start to see the dividends. So, a bit of an interesting day all round on Brexit. What do you think about developments thus far? Please leave a comment below. Thank you. Please do like and share this video, and also subscribe to my channel. And when subscribing, please do remember to press on the little bell next to the subscribe button. That way you'll get an alert every single time I put up a new video. Thank you very much for watching.